الله أكبر تعال مدام
Iran launched multiple missiles against an American military of the Iranian attack, a second source said. I can confirm that Al Udeid Air Base was attacked by short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles originating from Iran today. At this time, there are no reports of U.S. casualties, a U.S. defense official told Axios. We are monitoring this situation closely and will provide more information as it becomes available. Iran's Supreme National Security Council released a statement claiming the number of missiles fired at Qatar was equal to the number of bombs the U.S. used in its strike on Saturday, signaling a desire to de-escalate. The base that was targeted in the attack by the powerful Iranian forces was far from urban facilities and residential areas in Qatar, the statement said. This action did not pose any threat to our friendly and brotherly country, Qatar, and its noble people. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had earlier released a statement claiming it had launched a devastating and powerful missile attack against Al Udeid. This base is the headquarters of the Air Force and the largest strategic asset of the U.S. terrorist army in the West Asia region, the IRGC statement said. Iran will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and national security unanswered under any circumstances, the statement stressed. The Foreign Ministry of Qatar issued a statement. Trump was meeting at the White House with his national security team, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane, as the Iranian attack unfolded. The president has warned that any retaliation will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed during the U.S. military attack against 3 Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. Qatar had announced earlier in the day that it was temporarily closing its airspace due to rising regional tensions. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates also closed their airspace after the Iranian attack. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is the biggest U.S. military installation in the region. In recent weeks, many of the base's aircraft and personnel have been evacuated. The U.S., UK, and China issued warnings on Monday advising their nationals in Qatar to shelter in place as a precaution. Gas-rich Qatar, which lies 190 kilometers, 120 miles, south of Iran across the Gulf, is home to the U.S.'s largest military base in the region, Al Udeid. The 24-hectare, 60-acre base in the desert outside the capital Doha was set up in 1996 and is the forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command, which directs U.S. military operations in a huge swathe of territory stretching from Egypt in the west to Kazakhstan in the east. It houses the Qatar Emiri Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, the United Kingdom's Royal Air Force, and other foreign forces. It houses around 10,000 troops. Earlier this year, The Hill, a Washington, D.C.-based newspaper, reported that Al Udeid's long, well-maintained runways enable rapid deployment, making it a critical component of U.S. force projection. The Hill also reported that Qatar's investment in Al Udeid has kept it at the forefront of military readiness while saving U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars. Over the years, it said, Qatar had spent more than $8 billion upgrading infrastructure. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Moscow just 48 hours after a major U.S. strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities. Israel launched airstrikes on Iran's military and nuclear program earlier this month, and Tehran has responded with its own salvos of rockets and drones. Scores of civilians have been killed in both countries since the air war began. While Russia has condemned the Israeli and U.S. strikes, it has not offered military assistance to Tehran, and it has downplayed its commitments under a strategic partnership agreement signed with Iran earlier this year. In this new, dangerous situation, our consultations with Russia can certainly be of great importance, Araghchi was quoted as saying by Russian state media upon his arrival in Moscow. Iran's official IRNA news agency reported Sunday that Araghchi would meet with Putin and other senior Russian officials to discuss regional and international developments following the military aggression by the United States and the Zionist regime against Iran. Putin had initially floated the idea of mediating between Iran and Israel. On Friday, however, he appeared to walk back those efforts, saying he was merely suggesting ideas after U.S. President Donald Trump dismissed a Kremlin role in resolving the crisis. We are by no means seeking to act as a mediator. We are simply suggesting ideas, Putin said during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. If those ideas appeal to both sides, we'll only be glad. On Saturday, Russia's foreign ministry condemned the U.S. strikes as irresponsible, after earlier warning Washington against any military intervention.
Well, the absolutely provoked aggression against Iran has no basis and no justification. What about you today in Moscow?
These aggressive actions by Israel and by the United States are illegitimate and they violate international law and international norms. And currently we are protecting our sovereignty, our country, and our defense in this regard is legitimate. We also wanted to thank our Russian counterparts, our Russian friends, for condemning these aggressive actions. Russia today has chosen the right side of history and international law. And the Supreme Leader and Iranian President Pezeshkian asked me to convey their best greetings to you, and I hope that today we will have a chance to discuss all the matters related to this situation. Thank you very much.
Dmitry Medvedev, commenting on the U.S. strikes on Iran, claims that some countries are now ready to directly supply Iran with their nuclear arsenal, and that, overall, Iran hasn't suffered but has only grown stronger. In short, the usual rhetoric from Russian propaganda. What did the Americans achieve with their night strike on 3 points in Iran? 1. Critical infrastructure of the nuclear cycle appears to have suffered little or no damage. 2. Enrichment of nuclear materials, and now we can say directly, and future production of nuclear weapons will continue. 3. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their nuclear weapons. 4. Israel is under attack. Explosions are thundering. People are in panic. 5. The U.S. is drawn into a new conflict with the prospect of a ground operation. 6. Iran's political regime has been preserved, and it is highly likely that it has become stronger. 7. The people are consolidating around the spiritual leadership, even those who did not sympathize with him. 8. Trump, who came as a peacemaker president, started a new war for the United States. 9. The absolute majority of countries in the world are against the actions of Israel and the United States. 10. With such success, Trump will never see the Nobel Peace Prize, even despite all the venality of this nomination. A good start. Congratulations, Mr. President. Trump responded to Medvedev, who claimed that a number of countries are allegedly ready to transfer their nuclear arsenal to Iran. Did I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the N-word nuclear and saying that he and other countries would supply nuclear warheads to Iran? Did he really say that, or is it just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. The N-word should not be treated so casually. I guess that's why Putin's the boss. By the way, if anyone thinks our hardware was great over the weekend, far and away the strongest and best equipment we have, 20 years advanced over the pack, is our nuclear submarines. They are the most powerful and lethal weapons ever built, and just launched the 30 Tomahawks. All 30 hit their mark perfectly. So, in addition to our great fighter pilots, thank you to the captain and crew. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance responded to Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev's condemnation of U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear sites.
This morning, the Russian reaction caught my eye. Dmitry Medvedev, of course, the former president and prime minister of Russia, now the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, said the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. What do you make of that Russian response? And are they off base? I mean, they're saying that the nuclear program in Iran is still well underway.
Well, first of all, I think it's a bizarre response, but I also don't know that that guy speaks for President Putin or for the Russian government. One of the things that we've picked up, John, in our conversations with the Russians over the last few months, despite our many disagreements, of course, with the state of Russia, they've been very consistent that they don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And this is what I think many commentators underappreciate about what the president did last night. Iran having a nuclear weapon, nuclear proliferation in the Middle East is a disaster for pretty much everyone.
Rubio on Iran. Not at war, but U.S. acted after Iran ignored peace offers. World safer now, despite public condemnation.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Are we now at war with Iran?
No, we're not. This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the President of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do for, their own public relations purposes. But the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime in Iran.
Have you heard?
Meanwhile, mass protests have erupted in the United States amid U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. According to media reports, demonstrations against the escalation of the conflict took place in New York, Washington, Chicago, San Francisco, and other American cities.
The wealth in this country. Politics.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. He's doing the job every day.